Hey Alex, how are you?
We're still living in a camper. We're Sandy survivors,
A
you
camp?
know?
Wow, a camper, yeah.
Yeah, shit, but that's the way it is.
Yeah,
Nothing I can do about that.
hey, you do what you have to do in life.
Absolutely.
That's the,
So,
ma-
Lester tells me you used to go around the action.
yeah, well, I unfortunately stayed in Brooklyn most of the time. I mean, I left a few times, but uh,
Uh-huh.
but back then, this was late 50s into the 60s. There was some,
Okay.
there was so much action at my home lanes, which was Avenue M Bowl, that it was almost like I
Okay.
had no reason to leave.
Okay. Well, I bowled there a couple of times, but that was later on in the 60s. I came back, I got drafted in 65. I went to Chicago, and I spent 2 years there in the Navy. And so I bowled in the Waukegan area, Chicago area at that time. But then when I came back, I got hooked up with Ira at Oceanside Bowl. He was probably maybe 18 at that time.
Right.
I'm probably 3 years older than him. And so we got friendly there for a while, and I went around with him and Richie Garber. He took me over to Avenue M a couple of times. I ended up bowling Bobby Smith once, and I beat him. And then the next week I came down, the only action I could get was either Lemon or Mark Ross.
Really?
That was in '68.
In
But I
68.
bowled, that had to be 60, yeah, because I got married. I was already married in July, so that had to be March or April of '68.
Yeah, how much action was at Avenue M in 68? I had already left. I was at Avenue M from 58 through 66.
Actually, I went down there, I remember it was on a Sunday night. I mean, there wasn't that much, but there was some, you know. Ira took me down there. I ended up bowling in a doubles match where I bowled with Red Bassett, and we bowled, trying to think who we bowled. We bowled Bobby Smith and someone else, and we won. Following week, I bowled Bobby, and I won.
Yeah, Bobby Smith was a good action bowler.
Yeah, he was a house bowler.
Right.
You used to go around Colony at all?
A little bit.
Colony,
A little bit.
Colony and Seaview?
Yeah, right. Like Colony with Philly Marino and.
Yeah, I bowled, well, yeah. Philly, I knew Philly fairly well because I went to Thomas Jefferson High School for a couple of years.
Oh, really?
That was 50, well, so I graduated Long Beach in 63. So that was 59 and 60, but I was just starting to bowl. Then in 62, I moved back to Long Beach. So I was living in Long Beach. I was 16 years old, and I bowled a 300 game in Long Beach Bowl. Even though it was in a match, it was still a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Not many 300s, and a 16-year-old kid bowling one. You know, I got in all the Long Island papers and all that shit.
Oh, yeah, well, I'll put it this way. Take Avenue M. Now, Avenue M, especially in the early 60s, we had big-time action 5 or 6 nights a week for about 3 years running. I mean, the biggest bowlers you can think of, the biggest names, constantly there. The point is this. There was never a 300 game thrown at Avenue M. League,
Yeah.
action, or open play.
It was very difficult back then.
Right.
Then I had another one in '63 in a match against Sandy Catalano. So Sandy at C&J Lanes in Oceanside. But I bowled. '63. I was old enough to drive. I had a car. I was in Long Beach. I was 16, 17 years old, and I bowled at the West End in Long Beach. And who'd we have came down there? Lemon, Cliffy Berglund came down every Monday night. OK used to come down on Mondays. I bowled him. I went to Seaview a couple of times. I went there with Billy Hart and also, an Oceanside guy. But Billy bowled in Queens quite a bit also.
Right.
He had, right around that time, 61, 62, he was really a hot ticket item. He bowled like 300s in that time. But I got friendly with Billy. We bowled a lot of doubles against him and his uncle, Harry, and then Barry Weiss. I don't know if you're familiar with Barry.
Barry,
To go around.
Barry Weiss or Barry Bernstein?
Well, Bernstein, yeah. Bernstein backed Ira. The admiral.
Right, yeah.
Later on in the 70s, I was the night manager, the graveyard shift manager in Green Acres. We had all the action down there on Thursday night. And I also, later on, worked in Kuski's in Baldwin. I was the lane man, the bartender at the lunch counter concession. The big matches were usually George Gunther against some of Bill Daly's guys. There was Max Perjansky's guy.
Right.
Max, sponsor Don McCune, he had Petraglia, Don McCune, and Tommy Hudson all at the same time. He put them all out on the tour. And Max and Hank Bierbaum also. I used to bowl on Thursday nights. They had their good league, their good major league at that time. And we had Batista bowled in the league, Hank Bierbaum bowled in the league. I think Schlegel came down a couple of times. He had Petraglia come down to bowl some of Daly's guys. But, John, nice guy, great bowler, obviously, was not a good action bowler.
What about Kenny Barber? Was you ever involved with Kenny?
Oh, yeah.
Now there's a character.
Tell you a story about me and Kenny.
Uh-huh.
1965, the New York State eliminations to the U.S. Open. The finals are in Bay Bowl in Port Washington. Kenny and I both make the finals. I'm 19 years old at that time. I was doing construction with my father. I'm driving a nice new Corvette, who's better than me?
Right.
And I'm bowling, So I was bowling a lot of doubles with a guy by the name of Phil Lomenzo at that time. Phil was a really, really good bowler.
Right.
He could turn it, he could throw a full roller at will and be really, really good. His physical game was great. He had made the Newsday finals. He was a real good player, Phil. But he was my doubles guy, so Phil and I went around for a while. We went up to Derby, Connecticut, we went around. But anyway, so Kenny and I, so it's 2 8-game blocks, one on Saturday, one on Sunday. So Saturday I'm bowling, so-so. And I'm like in next to last place. 12 people made the finals. So it was actually like the same format as the All-Star.
Right.
As what is now the U.S. Open. The next day, I get a good run going, and I win the first 7 games, and we go into the last position round, and I'm in first place, and who's in second? Kenny.
Uh-huh.
So now we got a bowl to see who's going to win the elimination. And we both bowl like shit. I think he beats me 169 to 167.
Wow.
Now, after he beats me, he says, hey, can you give me a lift home? He didn't have a car.
Right.
And I end up driving him home to Queens Boulevard.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I take him home. After that, he drilled bowling balls in Whitestone for quite a while.
Right.
And I'm trying to think of where he ended up after that. But the middle to late 70s, after that was already late 70s, Mitch Moskowitz was around. he had the pro shop in the Elmont Bolaire. I was the bartender in the Elmont Bolaire. But I was a bad drinker back then, you know?
Right.
I mean, I had a problem in, you know, living in denial. And I saw Kenny a couple of times back then. And we went drinking one night, and the bartender closes the bar at 3 o'clock. Kenny's walking around the bar, and when the bartender's not looking, he's stealing his tips.
You're kidding.
Off the bar. No. I said, you're going to get us fucking killed in here. You know, you don't know who's in here.
Right.
But that was Kenny. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
I bowled his brother a bunch of times when I was a kid. I bowled Bruce in Mid-Isle in Hempstead.
Right.
Friday nights there used to be action there.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I bowled him. But I knew Kenny. I considered Kenny a friend, you know. I met Bert when I first really saw him was when I bowled with Lemon in Woodbury Lanes on Friday night. I bowled with Lou DeDoris Sr., Lemon, Bill Baratola, myself. I took Mike Chucholo's place when Chucholo went on the tour. Warren Matthias said, why don't you ask Alex? He'd probably fill in the second half.
Right.
So Lou Sr. So, because Warren I was really friendly with, Matthias. And, you know, those guys, Whitey Pulley, Warren Matthias, that group, you had a guy that was a ball driller for him by the name of Al Verity, who was a good bowler, you know, late 50s, early 60s on the island. You know, that was where I came from. You know, that was Long Beach, Oceanside, that South Shore area. Lemon was further out east. Every Monday night, he'd come to Long Beach with Cliffy, and they would end up bowling a couple of the West End guys. There was plenty of action there, you know. The most notorious match I bowled in was me and Lemon bowling Philly Marino and Joe C. in Colony Bowl on a Friday night after the Woodbury League. We went out there. So we went out there with a whole crew of guys. His brother Peter was with us, you know, and we were all betting. And we didn't realize that Joe C. and Mike were manipulating the bets and the wins depending on which way all the wise guy money was going. So Joe C. ended up in the hospital a week later, and Philly Marino had to let me out of the basement door because I bowled to get. You remember Erwin Resnick? Erwin, blonde kid, good bowler.
Mm-hmm.
So now the next week I go down there, nobody shows up. They put Joe C. in the hospital. I'm there to bowl the doubles match again. So Philly comes to me and he says, listen, Alex, he says, I know you had nothing to do with that. Whatever went on last week, we know that it was between Joe C. and Mike. And obviously Mike didn't show up. So I'm the only idiot that showed up. And 240, I lose both games. That guy said he went in the tank. I went in the tank with, you know, averaging 250. So I get out of there. I go to Greenpoint Bowl, and I bowl Pat Feely. I got him down to tap out. I need a hit. I leave the 8-10. I lose the tap out game to him, his tap out game, and then I sailed for my lungs. I went broke.
Wow.
And that was that. You can't give him the tap out match. If you got him the tap out, you gotta fucking win. If you lose, you give him another game and then develop high blood pressure or something, you know. When I was a kid and I was bowling action, I had these guys that came down. If they bowled me and I won, I went out, I spent it all on clothes, I spent it, you know, so that the next week I had 2 bets in my pocket, and if I lose those 2, I'm broke.
Right.
I got to get ready to go bowling. I bowl in the mixed league with my significant other. We will talk again for sure.
Right.
Glad Lester gave you my number. I'm glad you called. Brought back some memories. You know, maybe we'll both remember some more.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Good talking to you. Take care.
Okay. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Right
Yeah,
up.
you too. Bye-bye.